An intense civil war is taking place in Myanmar's Rakhine state. The Buddhist rebel group Arakan Army wants autonomy and has seized control of almost all of the state. However, the Myanmar military is showing no sign of giving up. Rakhine's Muslim minority, the Rohingya community, seems to be caught in the middle and in some cases directly targeted in the fighting.
The Arakan army and the Burmese military used Rohingyas communities' decades-long persecutions and vulnerability, take advantage of their Rohingya situations in their favor.
And the rival forces are not just committing massive atrocities against the Rohingya, they are now also trying to recruit them for the fight.
আরার দিয়ে আরার জাতরে কি করে জুলুম করাবার আরার দিয়ে আরার বাম্মা মুরব্বি দাঁড়ানোর মানুষের দিন আরা জুলুম করেন আরা জুলুম নগর দিলে আরার সাপ দেয়
The Rohingya have faced persecution in Myanmar for quite some time. Amidst mass expulsions in 2017, many Rohingya fled the country. Most of them ended up in neighboring Bangladesh, where they live in the world's largest refugee camp, unable to work and with few opportunities. Myanmar disowned them long ago by not acknowledging them as its citizens, making the Rohingya one of the largest stateless populations in the world.
And many of the citizens see Rohingya as a, how can I say, alien.
There are also some Rohingya armed resistant groups who would like to fight back.
At least they can still make a kind of guerrilla war to attack the AA or whatever, in the regions.
What does the civil war in Rakhine mean for the Rohingya? What is their future? We start here in Cox's Bazar of Bangladesh. This is a camp with more than 1 million Rohingya in a tiny area of about 24 square kilometers. The camp area is on the border with Myanmar's Rakhine state, where the Rohingya in the camp used to live. They fled during several military crackdowns and communal violence. A small number of them still live in Rakhine state, but due to the current civil war between Arakan Army, a rebel militia group, and the Myanmar military has led to even more Rohingya having to flee the fighting. But what is this conflict about? Rakhine state has a three-way fight. The Myanmar military has long targeted the Rohingya, who are mainly Muslim. The Rohingya community have had ethnic clashes with local Rakhine Buddhist people. And this is where the Arakan army comes in, since it is mainly Buddhists who want to create an autonomous region in Rakhine. So you have the Myanmar military and the rebel Arakan army fighting each other, and both of them have at times targeted the Rohingya who are caught in the middle. So how did we get there?
Communal tensions between the Buddhist Rakhine and the Muslim Rohingya populations in the Rakhine state go back a really long time.
That's Yasmin Loch, a Myanmar expert at the German Institute of Development and Sustainability.
At least until the time of colonial rule, when there was a lot of divide and rule policies by the colonial regime.
During World War II, the Buddhist Rakhine group took sides with the Japanese forces. At the same time, the Rohingya Muslim villages remained loyal to the British forces, as the region was under British colonial rule at the time. The Japanese advance triggered an intercommunal conflict between the communities, leaving thousands dead on both sides. However, apart from the intercommunal conflict, 22,000 Rohingya are believed to have spilled into Bangladesh, then British-controlled Bengal, after Japanese forces invaded Burma in 1942. However, there is a different version of the history as well.
Since colonialism, the British colonial rulers, imported many of the workers from India.
That is Aung Tu Nain, a director at the Institute for Strategy and Policy, Myanmar.
So that is one part of the problem. And secondly, during the Second World War, many of the India living in Myanmar, they are repatriated through the Bangladesh border, going back to India.
The tension between the two communities from the past remains for many today, and the Rohingya community has kept losing its home with their identity under attack.
It is the crisis of identity.
That's YY Nu, a human rights and women's rights advocate based in New York.
Burma is saying these people are Bengali. They are not our people. The Rohingya are saying we are native people of Rakhine. We are indigenous people. We are not Bengali. Although we are similar in many ways with Bengali, we are not ethnically Bengali. We have our own ethnicity. And thus we have rights within Rakhine.
Since Burma, as Myanmar was previously known, became independent in 1948, there have been significant Rohingya exoduses amidst communal riots, military persecution, and ongoing civil war.
Well, initially what played a role was mostly Buddhist nationalism as well as anti-Muslim discrimination and anti-Muslim sentiments. At the same time, both the Myanmar military and then later the Arakan army have resorted to rhetoric that kind of framed the Rohingya as what they called Muslim terrorists. So we see a very politicized religious discourse here.
Religion has been used both by the Rakhine politicians and Burma as a state. And the military has used Buddhist nationalism throughout the country, not only against the Rohingya, but also other religious minorities like Christians, Hindus, and all other religious minorities. Promote this superiority of the Buddhist religion over other religious minorities as a means to gain support and to instill fear and to promote their control over the territory.
Today, only a small number of Rohingya are left in Myanmar, mainly in northern Rakhine, while the majority of them, over 1 million, are in Bangladesh's overcrowded Rohingya refugee camps. Let's look closer at the situation in Myanmar's Rakhine state. Turmoil deepened after the 2021 military coup against the democratically elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. The coup sparked mass protests and a major anti-junta uprising, particularly in regions dominated by ethnic minorities. In Rakhine, the Arakan army has made major advances on the battlefield, capturing dozens of townships and military outposts in recent years. The rebel group serves as the military arm of the Buddhist people in western Rakhine state. About 500,000 civilians in Rakhine have been displaced internally by the fighting, according to the UNHCR. And 150,000 Rohingya have fled the current conflict to Bangladesh, where there was already a large refugee population from previous expulsions. In 2017, when Aung San Suu Kyi was in power, the Myanmar military moved against Rohingya Muslims in the state, forcing around 750,000 Rohingya to flee to Bangladesh. The international community condemned the Myanmar government for the mass killings and forced displacements of the Rohingya. The US formally categorized it as genocide. Even though they have also targeted the Rohingya, the Arakan army says their goal is to create an autonomous region in Rakhine state that includes the Rohingya. But on the ground, reality gives a different picture. They, Rohingya, still face discrimination, the burning of their villages, exclusion from work, a ban on moving freely, restricted education, and the threat of arrest, said UN refugee chief Filippo Grandi, who recently visited Myanmar. They are subjected to forced labor and forced recruitment. Their lives are defined every day by racism and fear, Grandi added. DW talked to a 19-year-old Rohingya man who said he was forced to work for the Arakan army while he was in Rakhine. When he had the chance, he fled the battlefield and took shelter in Bangladesh.
Ara doriere fotom ara zeiton lo jare zeiton trainil din zeiton mada kan butomike makfarase na manno zeiton do gere lakhayan yana ma training dil.
Another 19-year-old Rohingya refugee told DW that he was abducted from the Cox's Bazar refugee camp by a Rohingya group who handed him and 63 other refugees over to the Myanmar military in exchange for money. He told us the group targets young men from poor families as they are the most vulnerable and less likely to resist conscription.
Begun gori manjar phone der at dun lappai ar fante ashin begun kier phone gori manjar phone mane hatuna va mane illa manjar phone ugga alamdar phone nai ugga moli phone nai mane honodaron alamdar phone nai begun gori manjar phone tinno star kulawana shige arare mane bung tung fitting gara bung din aswa teng ma folle teng siri jaga bung in kulabana shige are laka na kial no gori.
We have not been able to verify this claim, but this is a common tactic. The Myanmar military gained about 2,000 people as recruits from the refugee camps between March and May last year. One aid group told the Reuters news agency that the military used a variety of ideological and financial incentives as well as false promises, threats, and coercion. The junta, however, denied allegations of forced recruitments of Muslims in a statement to Reuters. But international rights groups, including Human Rights Watch and the International Crisis Group, said that the Myanmar military has forcibly recruited Rohingya to fight against the Arakan army. For their part, the rebels are using the Rohingya in their fight against the government. The Fortify Rights Group says the Arakan army has recruited ethnic minorities, including Rohingya, unlawfully. The report says, in addition to attending military training, recruits are required to conduct hard and dangerous work such as portering ammunition and digging trenches on the front lines of the conflict with Myanmar junta forces. However, the Arakan army has also denied these allegations.
Arakan army was a revolutionary army for the Rakhine state, for Arakan as a whole. But now, I see Arakan army as an ethno-nationalist armed group, armed movement within Rakhine state, promoting Buddhist nationalism and alienating Rohingya and other diverse minority groups. I mean, they publicly say it, their leadership said it. After Burma or Myanmar military, their second enemy is the Rohingya.
Analysts think that the Arakan army control over most of Rakhine has made things worse for the Rohingya minority still there. However, the situation has apparently created a rare moment of unity among Rohingya rebel groups who have in the past bitterly fought each other for supremacy in Bangladesh's refugee camps. In November 2024, the groups pledged to work together against the Arakan army, according to the International Crisis Group. Infighting has sharply dropped since then, and the groups have expanded recruitment. And a new Rohingya leader has emerged, Dil Muhammad, who openly proclaimed resistance against the Arakan army. However, he is a controversial figure, known for his pro-Myanmar military views, the same military that targeted Rohingya repeatedly. There have been reports of attacks on Arakan army posts by the most prominent Rohingya insurgent group, Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. Back in 2017, the group was also accused of carrying out deadly attacks on security posts in Rakhine, which prompted a brutal military crackdown in Myanmar that drove more than 750,000 Rohingya Muslims to flee to Bangladesh. Ataullah Abu Ammar Jununi, the chief of the ARSA, was arrested in Bangladesh earlier this year as he was suspected of murder.
When it's come to ARSA in particular, the Rohingya have very mixed understanding and view on them. Some people believe that they are fighting for the Rohingyas' rights, but at the same time, many people also believe that their tactics and their strategies are harming the Rohingya more. Their failed strategy has enabled the junta to justify clearance operations, thus the genocide, and thus displacing nearly 1 million people. And now the Arakan army is doing the same thing, using these as their attacks as an excuse to impose collective punishments against the Rohingya. Father.
The analysts think that even though the Rohingya groups are now united, they don't have the ability to take control of northern Rakhine, the area they consider home. Identity seems to be getting more important.
What we recently have seen is that Rohingya resistance groups are also, which have been forming recently only, that they have also been using religious language, including framings of the resistance as jihad. This is a very recent phenomenon. There's also no evidence of connections to like international jihadist groups. At the same time, it of course adds fuel to this fire of the conflict.
It is true that majority of the Rohingya are the Muslim. However, my understanding of any of these groups is that their goal, their objective is to fight for their ethnic nationality and rights, ethnic rights as Rohingya. It is not about Islamic ideology or movement.
Against the backdrop, the Myanmar junta government has confirmed that 180,000 Rohingya refugees living in Bangladesh since fleeing their homeland are eligible to return. Those listed as eligible to return were among a list of 800,000 people that Bangladesh submitted to Myanmar. Myanmar has also indicated that final verification of another group of 70,000 refugees is pending. And Bangladesh says Myanmar has pledged to expedite verification of the remaining 550,000 names on the list. While this has raised hope in Bangladesh of a possible Rohingya repatriation, experts don't see a return of the community to Myanmar anytime soon.
I think the existing condition is very fragile, and then so nobody can guarantee, the safe and the voluntary and returns in dignity to their area. So I think at least, some regional countries as well as some regional powers may need to guarantee for their safeties. Especially China is quite important as well, the Bangladesh or maybe ASEAN.
I think with this very complex conflict that is going on in Rakhine State, between the Myanmar military and the Arakan army, and then also some armed Rohingya groups, there wouldn't be a way to ensure that the Rohingya community is safe in the Rakhine State at this point in time.
Many Rohingya refugees are skeptical of returning home to a state that still doesn't recognize them as citizens.
জানার মালার নিরাপদ দিয়ে আর অধিকার দিয়ে যদি ফাটাই বলা চায় আর 100% এখন যাই বলা প্রস্তুত আর যাই না আর দিন হারি তারি গিয়ে হিন্দে আর জাতিসংঘ আর ঘর বাড়ি মানে বিড়া বাড়ি বেকিং ফাইলে আর ফুজিয়ে এখন আছে দিন বেকিং শান্তি করে যাই ফাইলে দিলে যাই না আর বড় দিলে যাবান একবার লই যাইবো আবার মারি ফার করাইবো হাড়ি ফেলের এখন আত্মীয়রা আছে দিন বেকুন হাড়াছিরা গরের ওদের জুলুমাস করে তাইলে আর যাইবাতে শুনাই.
With such a complex nature of the crisis, there seems to be no light of hope for the Rohingya community. Will they be able to live in harmony with the Arakanis in the future? While Bangladesh has made diplomatic efforts to secure their return, there are no signs the international community is working to achieve that. The Rohingya remains caught in the middle of a conflict where both sides target them and try to recruit them.